Should have brushed my hair.
Okay, so that live stream should be coming up shortly. So we're both in Illinois. How you are you a native of Illinois?
Yes, I'm originally from Chicago, but
Oh,
I've been
okay.
living in the Quad Cities in Moline, Illinois for about 20 years now.
Oh, okay. Okay, nice. I'm
Yeah.
originally from Texas, the
Oh, is that
Dallas
right?
Fort Worth area, Arlington, but I've lived in Chicago for about 20 years.
Oh, really? Before moving. Oh,
What'd
but
you say?
you're originally from Texas and then you moved to Chicago?
Correct, correct. I came up here
Oh,
for grad school
oh,
and
okay.
have
And
been I
stayed?
moved here in 2005.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've been here, going on 20 years.
Do you
Um
miss Texas?
the what Texas has become, no. But my
Touche.
and no offense to people watching who may be from Texas, but my family is still there. So of course, it's gonna be endearing from a family standpoint, but considering the political and cultural climate there, I couldn't go back at this point.
I don't
Um
blame you.
um, but
I overstand you.
So this series, Brett, you are the I think fourth person I've interviewed. So, initially my goal was to try to, have a conversation with the book collector once a month.
Okay.
Um, Unfortunately, I fell quite a bit short of that goal last year. And some of it was just, timing. Some people aren't quite as comfortable, kind of being in a interview setting, and so
Okay.
I'm really grateful that you agreed to do this.
Oh, sure.
So I
No
appreciate
problem.
it.
No one ever asks me to do anything. I have to usually force myself upon people.
Oh, well, I appreciate you, giving up your time, especially on Martin Luther King Day. Nubia, who's in our group, and like I say, these the past interviews I've done, I've posted to the group. I also have like a small YouTube channel. I need to probably work on it more, but the two of the interviews are posted. Um, Nubia was one of the David Ruggles Prize winners. Have you heard of the David Ruggles Prize?
No,
You may
I
be
don't think so.
interested. I'm not sure if what your age is, but it's for people of color who are 35 years or younger, who are book collectors. Um, and they give you a prize. Newbie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's like 1,000 first place. I think second place is 500, and then there's a place, which is a smaller award. So Nubia was one of the winners one year. And that is how I came in contact with her name. Thank you.
The
Nubi's going to put
website.
the link on the website. Or if you know other people, please pass. If you don't qualify, Brett, if you know others, maybe you can spread the word. They do it it's in the spring. And like I said, Nubia put the link where they select a winner and then, they give you that prize money to do what collectors we like to do, buy more books.
Buy more books. Absolutely, absolutely. So, what is
Right.
the criteria for an award winner? Is it based on the types of books, or is it based on like volume, or how does
Um,
that work? How
the,
do they
the
say you're the one?
Well, and Nubia, you can jump in if you want, since you were one of the prize winners. I know, the base criteria is a collector of color, 35 years or younger. Some of the past collect, and when you go to the website, they have a list of a profile of the past collectors and like what their collections consist of. From what
Oh,
I can
wow.
see, each of them kind of has somewhat of a niche collection. of some sort. There's
Ah,
another gentleman who I also interviewed, and he collects books on historically Black colleges and universities.
oh
Um,
wow, that's pretty cool.
Nubia has her own sort of mobile museum called the People's Porch. She's located in Kentucky and does like just outstanding work with her. And if I'm using the wrong terminology, please correct me, Nubia, with her traveling exhibit. And she has like, a bunch of out of print books and ephemera magazines and just an incredible collection she has. But but again, you can look to see who the past winners are and kind of get a feel for, kind of how they select. I don't know if they're, or what the past winners look like, put it like that. I don't know
Okay,
all the details exactly of, what they look for, but it seems like some of the past winners have, kind of had somewhat of a niche collection, or they either showcased it a subset, even if they collect more than that, a subset of kind of like, what they kind of specialize or collect. Um,
sure.
but I wanted to interview you. I learned about you through your YouTube page, which is called Black Lit Geek. Um, and your YouTube, first of all, I don't know if you've been told this before, but your your channel, the Black Lit um Geek channel voice, the ambiance that you create, is just so relaxing and calming and soothing and everything.
Oh, thank you.
And you're like a collector's collector, and some of the things that you do, I find myself doing also as a collector. When you are, some of the camera angles that you have,
Oh,
with your
sure.
books and, holding them up and just certain things as a collector, I see myself doing some of the same things. And you also have some, and we'll get into this in the questions, but some, pretty intriguing titles. You acquired some really whole collections from people who've passed on, and you really intimately get into, you know, the this collector's books and what you learn about this collector and things like that. And we'll get into that. And so I thought, that you would be perfect for this, to have a conversation with. So we'll get into the questions. How long have you been collecting books? And also, I asked this question of all the people I've had a conversation with. Do you embrace that term collector? If so, why or why not?
A good question. Um, First, as far as the term collector, I don't have a a problem with it. You know, I've always when I first began picking up collections of books, and I would say it has not been long. It's been a year. I mean, I've had my own little personal library, so to speak, just books that I enjoy, like the normal person would have around their house. They normally will have the books that they've read and they pick if you're a reader. And it it kind of started growing from there, and it originally just came from my love of a lot of really good Black authors, you know, and Albert French and John Edgar Whiteman and Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, you know, just the gamut. And it just kind of grew from there with BookTube because I started with BookTube on YouTube many years ago. I stopped doing that. I started doing start going in different directions with my comedy and my art and running and all these different things. But then I just said I want to come back to BookTube because it's the only thing that really sustained me on social media and kept me wanting to be on YouTube were the books. And it was one of those things that came easy for me because it's you know they say that the best content that you can have is content that that is not content, so to speak, just what you do in the course of a day. So if you just set up a camera, if you like books, you're not doing work to create content about books. So that was kind of how I got into it, and I've always wanted to have like a library full of books. I just love the aesthetic, right? I mean all of us do. I like yours. I see your background. I'm like, okay, I see you. So for me, it was just like I wanted that. I wanted the collection, and because I love books, and I love authors. I love the stories, especially African American authors, because what a lot of people don't realize is those voices are gone.
Mhm.
You know, um, the what we write today was not written out of the same struggle.
Mhm.
So for us to have these voices, it's just like being able to listen to your grandmother, you know, or Alex Haley. I have three copies of Queen just because it's Alex Haley, So that's like a big deal to me. And when I picked up began picking up the first collection, all of these different books, it just started giving me a much higher purpose. And I never wanted to be considered like a collector, and because it's just a title. So I don't really have a problem with that. But I eventually just became a collector of collections, you know. And
Okay.
I enjoy it. I mean, it's been a year, and I have around 6,000 books. So I just kind of
Mm.
been broadening that whole thing. I had to get them out of my apartment. You've seen those videos of on the channel of me in my apartment, but if you would have seen the whole thing, you would have seen books literally stacked up to the ceiling in a 600 square foot apartment, you know.
I've been there. I've had apartments in Chicago, and the movers are I'm sure cursing me out in their heads, having to, because books are heavy.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
like carry these, boxes and things like that. So,
Yeah,
I
they're a nightmare.
I totally understand.
You
Uh,
can't move. You can't move. You have to just kind
right.
of stay in your place forever because I just moved a couple of
Okay.
months ago and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Moving those books are ridiculous. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely an undertaking, no doubt. And speaking of your collections, um, how did you, for those who, may not be familiar with your YouTube, I know you detail these things in your YouTube page, but how did you acquire these collections? And how have acquiring these libraries either enhanced, or and you kind of alluded to this, enhanced or altered, your reading habits or tastes?
Oh,
If
that's an equally good question. I look on Marketplace. I look the Reader newspaper. A lot of people be surprised. The Reader newspaper. There's usually postings for more elaborate stuff in there. Craigslist. There's a collection on Craigslist right now, but he wants something like $10,000 for it. It was a bunch of art art history books. It's just it wasn't worth it to me. I like more and this woman I met on Facebook Marketplace, she has a she does estate sales. She helps people with estate sales, and I found estate sales to be really that sweet spot as far as picking up a collection
Mm,
because these are curated books. This is a book lovers collection. So it's much different to have a collection like that than to have a bunch of Billy's children's books.
mm,
There's no real
yeah.
value for me in that because I mean, children's books are cool, but I don't just want to be a book disposal unit, so to speak. I believe that books have character, and when I go through a collection and I'm looking at them, I'm finding out so much about the the collector,
Mhm.
what his tastes were. You'll be surprised some of the things I found inside of book collections belonging to one person. Playbills of them in high school, pictures of them, notes they've wrote, so many things where I've literally been able to piece together a good history of this person's life
Mm.
from their books, from the things that they leave inside of their books or what they bookmark. And collectors are real funny people. You know, we do little quirky things. We mark, we write, we leave letters in books. I have a book of original copy of Roots. It's all beat up, but it has all of my family's obituaries in it, and it
Mm.
has my mother's original signature in it. And it's the
Mm.
only original signature that I know of from my mother, rest in peace, you know. So,
Mm.
and she used to read a lot, so yeah, that's pretty much kind of. And as far as my habits, that just it's always been something I want to do. It sometimes over the years it had gotten difficult. It is a discipline. You have to sit down, and you can't just have your 75-inch on and think you're going to read a book. It's not going to happen because I think that we're in the digital. We're in the digital age. We're in the digital space. So if you just look at shorts, like short video shorts, they are quick. They're quick. If I look at my niece is doing this, and then she puts it on auto, and she's just like, it's just going, going, going. So you can't get that from a book. You have to kind of back up and slow down. And I think that's why people don't enjoy reading, because it you have to unplug from that instant download that you get from social media. And a lot of people can't. They just don't choose to, because it's almost painful for them to just sit there. you know
Definitely, definitely. And I have a follow-up question to this in a moment, but Nubia put in the chat when you mentioned that you're not just a book disposable unit, she agrees with that, and she said that learned that, or not learned, but that she doesn't take all books and had to learn to say no with
right.
with no emotion.
Definitely. And sometimes me, if I pick up a collection of books, 1,000 books, um one collection, 1,000 books, um i I've kind of found good use for those books too. Of course, they don't become part of my personal collection. Some of them have relevance, even some that I just don't personally, because if I had to just go and pick up books that I like 100%, I would get rid of this Candace Owens book that I have right now because I don't like Candace Owens. But um I as my collection grew, I had to realize that um, that as I kind of came up with this new idea for what to do with my books, and not just have them all surrounding me, but to make them available to others. That's when nonfiction books. I bought books from this guy that owned them named Gary Goodwin, and he was a conservative. He was a veteran. He was a pilot. He was all of these things, service member, war hero, all of these. And some of those books, me as a brother, I was just like, huh, so this is what you read, and huh, but but there is knowledge to be gained from knowing what someone else reads, and actually looking through some of those books, because I have a lot of books that if you look through them, they're all but demonizing people that I consider to be heroes. But there's a place for that. It definitely has a place in my overall collection,
Mhm.
because I mean it's still reference material. And so I do keep a lot of just trash is trash, but if I can find value in it, I'm gonna keep it. If there's just no value in it from a historical educational standpoint, just something, it has to be something for me to hold it, you
Yeah,
know.
sure. And it's, funny you mentioned that it's some quote. I don't know who, can't remember who supposedly said it, but I'm sure you all have heard of it, something to the effect of, books are like a person's bookshelf is like a window to their soul.
That's so, yeah.
And there's, two books that I have. One of them is both of them are, terrible people in history, but one of them is on all of the books in Hitler's collection. And well, not all of the books, but the book centers on some of the books that were in Hitler's library. And
Mm,
he, you know, was actually a very voracious reader. And ironically, he had Black authors in his library. I think he had like, um, what was it? Richard, I don't know. If I knew this was going to come up, I would have, had the book with me. But he actually had Black authors like in his, library. That doesn't mean he
mm,
still was not racist. And
right,
I have
right.
another book that centers on Stalin and some
Ah,
of the books that were in his library as well. So I think that, I think it is interesting to see, especially individuals who have such indelible marks on history, as evil as
sure.
those marks may be,
Hmm.
just a window as to what kind of was, feeding their mind or how they shaped. In the book that I have that talks about the books that were in Hitler's library, he was one of those like compulsive like annotators. So it has like actual like photographs
Oh,
of like some of the books that and his annotations in the side and things like that. So when you were talking about the gentleman whose library you picked up, who, was kind of opposite of you in a lot of ways and was conservative and
awesome.
things like that, and how you got a window into kind of who he may have been like. So I think that's, definitely interesting. And I have this kind of story, and I've, talked to Newbie about this, but this picture came up on my feed. I think I was trying to get to the Facebook group, and this person had posted, it was a picture of like some African American books, and it was like, of course, classics, Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, and there were also some nonfiction books. And so the person that posted it was saying that, they have boxes of African American history, classic African American literature, and, they're looking to sell it. And, they kind of listed roughly that was in it and so on and so forth. So, I reached out to the seller and, said that I was interested. I had this Facebook group, I'm a collector,
Absolutely.
blah, blah, blah. And so I asked the seller, how much are you, looking to get for this? And so they were like, well, we don't really know. Um, and just real vague answers of they didn't
Oh,
know,
sure.
blah, blah, blah. And then something had happened, and they were like, I'll get back to you with more pictures and this and that. So they ended up getting back with some more pictures. And she did mention that some of the books have say from the library of Barbara O. And Barbara O was she was one of the actresses. She was in Daughters of the Dust. Um, and did some films, I guess, during kind of like the 70s, 80s, or what have you. Now the pictures that they sent weren't any pictures of Barbara O's signature or anything in it. The pictures they sent were just like spines in a box. And these
Ah,
particular individuals, I think they do real estate or what have you. And so I think they found these, and they do it in the Ohio area. That's where Barbara O passed away. She lived, I think, in the Dayton. She's from Dayton, Ohio. So I don't know, how they got in contact with her books. So then the business associate contacted me some days later with some more pictures of
Oh,
things or whatever. So again, I asked him, I was like, what are you looking to,
you want
get
for
for this? And it was the
right,
same, just vague, answers. I don't, we don't really know. Just nothing.
right.
So, I threw out, and it's approximately, they said was approximately like 250 books. Um, Now they didn't send me pictures of all 250, they sent me kind of a sample again. Also, I didn't
Hmm.
see any pictures of the Barbara O either. I'm trusting that, so I just threw out a number. I said, okay, 500. So then she wrote me back saying, well, we're not going to be able to, make a deal on this. We've contacted UCLA, who houses Barbara O's papers. I'm also in contact with another, you know, bookstore on the East Coast, blah, blah, blah. But, we'll reach out if things fall through. So,
Oh,
I just
wow.
kept it short, and I'm like, okay, thank you,
Thank
whatever.
you.
I just kind of walked away thinking, like, first of all, if you feel like you had something of value, whatever, then you should have, and you knew you weren't going to go a certain level, you should have at least A, given a baseline.
Yeah.
B, if you're
Yeah.
also in contact with other, you know, people, organizations, that's something you could have said up front instead of, wasting the time, your time, and what
Hmm.
I'm saying, kind of going
Right.
back and forth. And so, I raised that to say, I don't know, what your experiences have been like when you're
Oh my
acquiring these
God.
collections, or, is it this negotiation, or people like, this is what we want for it, how do you,
You know,
um,
that's a great question and a great example. In a lot of cases, people don't know. Okay. The more ambitious, some people they want the books out of there. You know, the conservative, the lady around the conservative books, she wanted the books out of there because they were selling his house, like immediately. So that was just like, okay, couple $100 and they were gone. Give them up. You know, I didn't know it was like a treasure chest. I mean, to throw out $500 for 200 books, um, I probably wouldn't have personally went that high. I always start with a low number, but I kind of can get a sense of people. It's almost like, and this is crazy, but the more interested you seem in the collection, they don't know. Most cases, unless they're pretty much literal enough to go through books and research what these books being used are selling for individually online, they just don't know. Some people are just overwhelmed, especially the more books they are, the more overwhelmed they are because they don't know. They don't have a clue. That's why I just throw out what I am willing to go, and
yeah.
I will start low, but I don't do a whole lot of back and forth. I had a collection where this guy, he ended up selling the books for like, I think it's like $150, but it had so many. I have a couple of them here. A couple of he had like across 110th Street. You know, well, he doesn't know. He's in Coal Valley, Illinois. He has no idea what this is even all about. Across 110th Street, Radcliffe, Carver, and one of the most important finds that I found in there was this book, which is Road Work, which is Richard Bachman, but it's Stephen King.
Mm,
It was a pseudonym that he wrote this under a pseudonym. So they don't. I had George Bernard Shaw. Of course they're not. They're of no interest to him.
mm,
He's probably not even a reader. So
Yeah.
I just kind of I think that they did one thing interesting. They kind of gave you a glimpse of things that they felt that you could probably relate to. You I mean, you seeing the black books. If somebody shows me a bunch of black authors, I'm in. I'm like, okay, Tony, who? Because I want to know what else you got. You know,
Right. Right.
it's I guess it's I kind of reduce it to numbers because I know that they're going to reduce it to numbers. You know,
Mhm.
if the bigger the collection, the more they want. I mean, because if you even use simple math, simple what do you call it, goodwill, dollar a book math. You can say, okay, you got 100 books. Okay, you're gonna sell them for $100. That's $1 a book. That's how people think when they're selling the books. They really don't even want them. I think they kind of gauge it based on how interested you are in it. You're kind of directing them. That's why they're being vague, because
Mhm.
they don't know. If they know what number that they want to go, but yeah, you know.
Yeah. And I feel like I could be wrong, but I feel like these individuals that I was dealing with, because Barbara O, who, was a black actress, I think that they attached some value to it. I think they were sort of
Sure.
being misleading in how they were doing things, because, the amount I did throughout for them to immediately say, well, no, that's not, they did have an idea in their mind of what they wanted to get. Now I understand there,
Hmm.
a lot of people who may be just trying to get rid of, because they could have countered that, if they were trying
Sure.
to get rid of something, or they really, they could have said, well, how, or they were motivated. So I think that they, were trying to, newbie said they were being exploitative against
Exploitative.
they don't care about, or Barbara. Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, so,
Man.
but thank you for, sharing your journey. The next question, you kind of already alluded to this, but do you have books or authors that are most prized or valued in your collection? Why, if you want to hold them up? I know you mentioned the Roots edition you have, and
Oh
that,
yeah.
family
Um, I,
obituaries are
I
in
have I have so many different books. My books are now, I have like 10 bookshelves in the back of my brother's barber shop. I'm literally opening up the
Yeah, I saw
bookstore
your
there.
video. You
Yeah.
all are trying to get it together.
There's this one book. It was from 1910. It's called Felders. It was a pricing guide that they used back then to price. It was like for pricing wheat, for pricing corn. It was really interesting, but it also had prices for cotton and prices for what an overseer would get as well, just to look over the field. So that's kind of interesting. But as far as my personal favorite, I do have a personal favorite. It's oh goodness gracious, my niece. It's Albert French. I don't know if you guys know Albert French, but he's literally my favorite author. Billy is this is my favorite novel. So I'm sure you've seen me talk about this book before on my channel.
I have. And you know what? Your video actually, it's a later printing, but it's
Hmm.
a bookstore out in San Francisco, Bollinger, and I just bought, it's not here yet, a signed copy of Billy that's coming. Like I say, it's a later printing, so it's not like, a first printing. I don't know how much
To have his
you would get,
signature.
but
Oh, I
but
I would just to have his signature because he hasn't written that many books. He's written
yeah.
five,
And you know what?
so
I can
I
send you the
have.
link, because they have some other ones, some, and they're not that reason. Like I think I paid $15 for the Billy that's come. They're pretty reasonable for a sign. So I'll send you the link,
I
because there were some
definitely
other
I
ones up
need
there.
that. I have all of his except Cinder. And it's crazy that this Zoom is happening today and not tomorrow because I had to go to the UK. I had to buy a copy of Cinder, which was his last novel, and very, very rare. I found three copies of that novel online, period, and they were all overseas. So
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Well, I'll
so
text you their
it's
information and you can look because, like I say, they were pretty reasonable, and there's a couple signed by him that I saw. So I'll
wow.
text you the link when we're done. Um, so you are there, I know that we spent time on how you acquire the collections.
Mhm.
Aside from the collections, like what other ways or places, ways that you acquire books or places your go-to? Are there certain websites or stores or
I'll
methods?
go anywhere. I go to Goodwill, Salvation Army stores, antique stores. I picked up a this old copy of Gone with the Wind from
Oh,
a from an antique store, and the lady's like, she was like, you can have it for $8, and it's like from the turn of the century, and I'm like,
wow.
thanks, thank you. So, I pick them up some, and I go to, of course, I go online, I go to thrift books, Abe, I go to different book places like that, which you can find good deals. I'm not a when I think of a book, I like that copy of Billy. I had that hardcover um for a while, and this is the second copy of the paperback that I had. But the thing was, I wanted the older copy, not necessarily just saying, okay, I want a first edition, because I'm not like a that type of collector. Of course, if I see it's a first edition, but it's something about the character of older books or used books that that energizes me. That's just like Autobiography of Malcolm X. I don't even own a copy of the Autobiography of Malcolm X
Really?
because I don't want. Of course, I did see a first edition hardback online for $600, you know, but I want to run across it.
Mm,
I could pick it up and it probably wouldn't cost me anything. I got some credits built up on some of these sites, and it probably wouldn't cost me anything, but I want if I just have to get something, I'll get it. But they just have to have a certain aesthetic. Like I can remember like these old Donald Goins books in my grandmother's attic, and I literally remember these covers. You just kind of looked at them, but you didn't. I didn't read them. I was a little boy. I didn't read these books, but I can remember the font and everything, just like it was yesterday.
mm,
So when I go there, I don't want that reprinted copy of this. I want this old beat up $4 one. You know, I have
right.
I have pimp. You know what I mean? And it's just it's just a character. They have actual character and they actually speak. Nothing was actually written in there. I was hoping to find one with something written on the inside of it, because that's just how I like to look at books. So I don't know if collector is actually accurate for me, because I'm not that that person that just wants to collect like these rare books. I don't think I have anything that's signed by anybody, and if I do, I don't know it. you know. But for me, it's just it's more about the aesthetic, and when I can find, because our stories um are here. I have a lot of our stories here, so that's just kind of what's important to me. So because okay, just like this one person jumped on my YouTube and said, it's just so unhealthy of you to have all those books. You're hoarding, and no one gets to look at those books for you, but you. And I kind of took offense to it. I'm like, you're just jealous, aren't you? But but I kind of took offense to it. But it did make me think. I want to be able to share. I want to be able to share these books with people.
Yeah,
I haven't figured out all the details yet, but as far as now goes, I do have a place to house books that are not in my house. So,
right.
yeah,
And I don't, this is just me, but I really don't understand when people go on I mean, there's, hundreds of thousands of YouTube channels. Same with even like social media posts, and people like to get on people's posts and, start
yeah,
wagging their finger and
right.
telling
about
people,
about books.
what they should or should not be doing, with their, whatever. I think it's just like
Their time, their money, their time.
exactly.
I
Like
mean,
it's like,
I
okay, if you have something, there's a lot of things I scroll through or see that may not be for me or I don't agree with, but I don't waste my time, typing out
right.
and trying to tell people
No,
what they should or should not be doing. Quite frankly, these are people I don't even know. Why do I even care?
here,
So I
right?
don't
Yeah,
even understand why people, feel the need to, to kind of always
you know.
tell people what they should be doing is kind of crazy to me. Nubia
Me
had
too.
put a question in the chat, and she says that what's been uh our experience from buying overseas? I believe that's the question. I
Oh,
know you
great.
mentioned you bought something overseas.
Yeah, and from the UK, it was that copy of Cinder. I can't remember the name of the seller, but it's going to be here tomorrow, and the it's overall great experience. It's been probably 2 weeks, so I didn't think that was bad. I didn't try to pay for anything special, and I was a little bit nervous at first because they give you a tracking number, and then you look at the tracking number and it doesn't give you any details. And I'm like, I've never heard of the company, that the carrier, the overseas carrier. It wasn't a carrier that I was familiar with, and the tracking number didn't work. So I immediately was just like, "Oh, great! They just got me for some money." But I did get a message saying that it's coming tomorrow. So far it's been good. But I did do a little bit of research. I remember copying and pasting the name of the seller and putting it into Google, and it did come back as a legitimate seller. So it wasn't a personally owned copy, so I didn't have to worry in that respect. And nobody has, came and took my $4 out of my bank account. Yes. So, I guess it wasn't some fraudulent people trying to steal money from you. You're not going to get much. I'll tell you that right now. But you know, you're not. But yeah, it's been positive, but it's only my first experience buying something online because I don't trust online shopping really. I can't stand it. I try not to use my bank account either. I try to use a credit card, because it seems like a safer thing to use a credit card than to use your actual bank account to buy things online. So I kind of do it
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah, my experience, I used to buy books. There used to be a company called Book Depository. They were really big, kind of like Amazon. They have since closed, I think, during the pandemic. But I used to buy books quite a bit from them, and it was pretty cool. It was always free shipping too, which was amazing to me. But maybe because they were so big, but that's kind of been my primary experience with buying overseas.
Well,
Sometimes it can be quite expensive, like, sometimes buying things overseas because I've seen certain things, but then the shipping is like coming from Australia, the shipping is like more than the cost of the item. So I'm like,
Right.
well, that's not even worth it, you know.
Uh, uh,
And even like on eBay, like I've seen books on eBay that were, there wasn't a US seller, whatever, but then the shipping will be like 20, $30. So I'm like, it'll be
that's more
more than
than a book.
actual, right, exactly, item. I'm like, I'll pass or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
it's just you have to I have to really want it to get beat by the shipping. I have to really
right,
want it for personal reasons. So, yeah,
right,
I feel you.
definitely, absolutely. Nubia was also saying that she um did some pop-ups and a drop everything and read in the park as a way to connect the community with some of her
Oh,
materials,
oh
to make
wow.
it accessible. That's really good, a really good thing, Nubia. And I've seen, and Nubia also has an Instagram page. I know she's um done some
Write that
things in
down.
the community with the People's Porch and everything like that. And Brett, aren't you with what's happening with setting up the books in the back of your brother's barber shop was your goal? I thought I heard on one of your videos your goal was to, I don't know if it's going to be a bookstore or some type of thing you were trying to make accessible to the patrons that come into your brother's barber shop.
Hmm. Yeah, I always say store. That's kind of a just a habit that I use. I always use the word store, but I love just when I was setting up and I was shooting the video in there, the dusty little spot it is. I was shooting a video and a friend just came back there, and then before I knew it, another friend came back there, and one of the hairdressers that work in there, she came back there, and they're just poking around and looking at books, and it just made me think of how valuable it is, and not to mention, and I'll give her a shout out. What's up, Alicia on Demand? She made a comment. She said, Brittany, when I told her I was putting the bookstore in the back of the barber shop, she said, brothers don't read. And, um, in my head, that kind of, I'm going to dispel that because, because I think that men, especially women, will pick up a book. Women choose authors. Women women love reading. They appear to be a lot more open to reading than men. Women, it's just what I've noticed. The majority of women that I know, and I don't think it's a coincidence. They read. They have authors, whether it's Ayanna Van Zandt or Zane. They have authors. They love reading. But men, you're like, no, no, son. So I think that it's important to have something like that for men. And to me, it's not like a profit thing because it's like walking a really fine line because I would love to get rid of some of these. um I have a lot of nonfiction books that I'm not interested in. I got more Winston Churchill books than I could even imagine, but I also have a lot of picture books, a lot of books that I think that people would just enjoy, browsing through, looking through. So it's kind of a slippery slope. I do want people to be able to flow in there. I mean, I do a lot of other things. I have a lot of paintings, and I did a few pop-ups last year with my art. Um, but I just want to create a space for books and for readers. Come back there, sit back there, as long as I'm back there, go back there
Definitely,
and just read, pick up a book,
absolutely,
start reading it. I even have old Jordan Sports Illustrated, a big stack of Sports Illustrated from the 90s that this guy was getting rid of and just kind of gifted. So yeah, you know, I
definitely.
just
Nubia was saying barbershop reading room.
You know, somebody on one of my subscribers said that they think that that's a brilliant idea. You know,
Yeah,
just to
definitely.
have that. I mean, there was a time when there was one little black at barbershops, a little black and white TV that wasn't even up loud enough to really hear it if it wasn't a game on. They listened to the radio in barbershops. There were newspapers, there were magazines, people were reading. They weren't just sitting there glued to, 50-inch high definition 4K screens. Now you seen a barber shop without a television in it, or a hair shop without a television in it?
Right,
No,
right.
because we're still that plugged in. I
Yeah,
believe that we're that plugged in, and we miss out on so much with books. We miss out on so
definitely.
much.
I don't even think because I know like when I was growing up in the 90s, I remember seeing like a bunch of magazines around, whether it was Ebony, Jet, whatever, or even hair magazines. And I'm trying to think like the beauty shop that I go to now. I don't think it's a magazine in sight there.
Inside, yeah, yeah.
Like there's not and even in the 90s, I think there may have been a TV there. I don't quite remember, but I know for sure there was reading material,
Sure. It was
there.
part of the
Um,
aesthetic.
right,
You sit down,
right,
you're waiting, you're gonna read something. That
right,
that
absolutely.
and that used to be, if now that you mentioned it, if you think of like doctor's appointments. There was a time when there was nothing but magazines there. That's what waiting rooms were for. Whenever you were waiting to do something, there was always something that you can pick up and read to kind of expand or take your mind off of it.
Right, definitely. And it's funny because even though people don't read magazines like they used to, the price of them seems exponential because I was in Family Dollar the other day, and when I walked in, they had this little kiosk with a bunch of just odd and end magazines there. But what stood out, it's a art gallery here in Chicago. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Brett, but it's off of 75th Street, I believe. Um, and it's been there for years. And there was a magazine that was basically the catalog for this black art gallery. So it had all of the art pieces that they've had during the years, but the magazine was vintage. It was like the last time they put out a catalog was like in the 90s. So
Oh
when I
wow.
picked it up, I knew this was like, wow. So there was no barcode on it or anything. I don't even know why I was in Family General, to be honest with you.
Right.
Maybe they don't, I don't know, but I went to the front and
Wow.
the teller was like, well, there's no barcode on this, but I can just scan another magazine. So he went over to scan another magazine, and one magazine was like $16. And I'm like, I'm not.
16.
So he was like, okay, well, let me look. So then he got another one. He got a couple. The cheapest one was like $9, which
Wow.
was
Oh
even
man.
more than I wanted to
Yeah.
pay. But because the this magazine, I knew I wasn't gonna be encounter. I, went ahead and bit the bullet. But I was telling
Oh
him
yeah.
people don't even hardly read magazines now, and they're like
They're like,
16, $20
yeah.
to
You
even
know,
buy a magazine.
Doesn't it seem like magazines have become more decor than actually something that you read? I mean, they still have a lot of high quality, cigar magazines and wine magazines and art and photography and blah blah blah. But they all just it's not like it used to be when you have a magazine and the next time you get another one, $3 magazines. No, you're gonna pay for them like Barnes and Noble. You go in Barnes and Noble with the magazine stands, those things are ridiculous. You can pay $22 for an art magazine. And what's funny about Barnes and Noble is that their CEO was just did an interview not too long ago talking about how Barnes and Noble is trying to change their or has changed their aesthetic to be to mimic um
like
like
the
used
neighborhood,
books.
right?
Yeah, did you see that? It was
I
on
did.
YouTube. Yeah, but now that you think about it, the prices don't reflect it.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
The prices don't reflect it.
And they're also, I know they're opening up a new Barnes and Noble not too far from me in the Hyde Park neighborhood. And there's already a couple of independent bookstores there. So there's, a lot of the independents are upset because because Barnes and Noble has really expanded like in the last couple of years, and they're opening like 60 stores supposedly like in the next 50 or 60 stores.
Oh wow.
But I know about five that opened here in Chicago and like last year. So a
Oh
lot of the independents are, rightfully upset because it,
yeah.
slowly kind of moves them out of the way because they're basically
Ah.
copying the independent model because and
Hmm.
I guess it's working if they're expanding, they're, buying inventory based on kind of the neighborhood and setting it up like that, mimicking the, independence. And then people, unfortunately kind of stop supporting the
Stop going
independent.
into small bookstores. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and they end up getting displaced. I think newbie she was
She said they
right.
got
She
the
said they
idea
ain't got
from
you.
us. I saw the
Right, exactly. They don't have used bookstore prices. Absolutely,
Yeah,
definitely.
that's true.
Um,
That's true.
well, my next question kind of dovetails what you mentioned with somebody who said, well, brothers don't read. I don't know about you, Nubia, or you either, but here lately, I've gotten all of these different like news articles in my feed, talking about, how nobody really reads a book nowadays, or not certainly they don't finish an entire book. And we've
That's
entered into this, what quote unquote post literate society. I was reading this article the other day that talked about how, a society that doesn't read also, is an assault on democracy and, all of these
true.
other ills that come about when we have societies of people who don't read or don't value reading. And so if that's true, it pains me to think, and I, read this other thing, I'm sure you all have seen where some college professors were complaining about how, there's all of these young people entering in colleges who haven't read a book really from, beginning to end. Um,
Yeah.
and, because we live in this, I think you talked about it earlier, kind of this attention economy, this social media age where people are just used to something. Yes, Nubia said it's from the Atlantic.
Atlantic.
It went viral. We live in this attention economy. People don't have attention spans. And I know I'm a teacher. I teach fourth and fifth grade. And, that's definitely one of the struggles is that, a lot of kids don't really have the stamina. And so there's a lot to kind of build up stamina. And there, certain things I have to do creative wise to kind of pique their interest, whether it's pairing it with, a video or doing something to hype up a book to, gain their interest. I'm of the belief if that one book can potentially hook a person if they get,
Oh, sure.
interested enough, that it can hook them and motivate them to want to read other books. But with all that being said, the if we do live in this post-literate society and people aren't reading like they should, and they even had some statistics and they were dire about the number of Americans who actually read a book in the past year. If all of this is true, it's almost like reading, I hate to say it this way, is becoming like a radical act um of reading. And it, pains me to to say it like that. But um first of all, how does this make you feel as far as if we live in this post-literate society and reading being a radical act? And do you have any ideas how we can increase reading habits, reading enjoyment in a society with low attention spans? And Nubia, feel free also to comment if you have, ideas on this as well.
No, that's a great question, and I do remember that question, and I did give that. That particular question, a lot of thought uh, because that's kind of my reasoning behind this whole technology and the way we are plugged into this need for immediate gratification, which you're not going to get in. Well, a lot of people don't believe that you're going to get in reading a book. No one's going to sit down. No one can still themselves long enough to sit down and read. But um, what I also have noticed, one thing that, and of course, I do blame this mostly on the digital era. I blame it on mostly social media, and everyone's had to jump aboard this technology wave because it's because they say it's a fear of being left behind, right? If you're not up with the technology, a lot of parents will want their kids. We want them kids to go to the best schools, and the best schools have what? The best technology, right? So it's kind of, even if it's not intentional, you're still playing into that whole facade. But you, but we what they don't realize is that you are missing information. I can pick up the points of Midsummer's Night's Dream online, but if I read the book, I'm going to get something that you're not gonna find in there. But who cares, right? Because no one's because we're not being graded on every intricate detail. We're rushing right along with society. So my thought, that since I believe that it's social media that put us there, it's um it's the same thing that can correct it. If you notice, there some you're a you do booktube and everything. So you see and you're on social media. Some people put on their glasses to look smart. Right? So it's almost like, when you say radicalize it, if it became something that was considered cool or generally accepted amongst the masses, everybody would be running around doing it.
Mhm.
You put a Kardashian in there, and she's reading it. 900, we can sit back and say it all day, but you put a Kardashian in there reading a book that's not about herself. If you see Will Smith reading a book that's not his own, that's what is, I believe, it will get people more excited about reading, not the stories. I mean, grassroots people like us, we know what's in a book, and and we can appreciate the authors. I want to hear what Toni Morrison has to say, more so than I want to read what someone that is just like a new author. I'm not as concerned with what they have to say. I have time to get to them. I haven't even made it to them. I'm still trying to get all the information from the authors that I like, but that I respect from history. But I believe that if it became some kind of faddish cool thing, that people would jump on board because social media tells people what to do.
Mhm.
So it's social media, that it's only social media that can get more people reading. It's unfortunate, but it's the truth. I don't try to fight the battle to get people to read. There are people who have read because they're down with my channel, or they get excited when someone else gets excited. Just like in the bookstore, just like in the barber shop, um, a man may not even be concerned with self-care, right? He's not going to go out and say, "Man, I just need to go get me some toenail clippers." He'll never go pick up a pair of toenail clippers if he had to go to the store specifically for that. But if it was placed right there in the barber shop, he'd be like, "Oh man, I need these toenail clippers." So to put these things right in front of their face, my friend Dion, he came in there while I was fooling around with the books, and he's picked up a book. So I think making them accessible is important. If they're right in your face, most of the people that I know, they don't they read, but a lot of them don't just frequent bookstores. Like me, I'm in somebody's bookstore. If it's one that I haven't been to, I'm going. You know,
Mhm.
but I think that to have them accessible, and it actually plays into your point about how these big bookstores are kind of taking over everything. There's an upside to that having bookstores there, but we also have to think about the little guys, the kids too. You know,
Mhm.
no one takes their kids for fun trips to the bookstore, but if a kid walks into the a bookstore, they're going to go crazy to find a book. So, I believe that we've lost I think that a lot of the millennials and beyond are kind of lost in the digital era. But, just like anything else, my son likes painting. He doesn't like digital art. He likes painting because that's what I've putting in.
Mhm.
So I think that's kind of the only way, making the books accessible and exposing it to them while they're young. My son goes and he'll spend $50 in a bookstore and he's in his teens. So yeah.
Yes, thank you for that. And I think, going back to your point of how we can popularize reading and make it cool again. I remember, and I know I'm older than you, Nubia, and Brett. I'm not sure what age you are. I'm 43, but I can remember growing up in the night.
55.
Oh wow, well, you looking good. I wouldn't have ever guessed
Well,
that.
thank you very much.
So may can relate to more to what I'm about to say, but I know, growing up in the
Nubia.
90s, there was the Book It program. And where if you read, so many books, then they would give you a ticket and you could get a personal pan pizza. And I can remember that being like a core memory in my childhood. Like everyone, wanted to, get those personal pan pizzas. And there was a whole campaign around the Book It program. You can get these big
Mhm.
buttons, and they had different types of
Oh wow.
incentives for kids to read. Um, of course, there were the Scholastic book fairs, and I know they still have,
Ah.
Scholastic going around. And even if you
Mhm.
didn't, outside of the book fair, they also had like the little like catalog, the little thing where you could take home and order books. I remember, in
I
the
remember
90s,
those.
there was this campaign, I think it was called Read at the bottom, and it had like different celebrities um that were like holding books. So it might be Michael Jordan, and what others, different type of celebrities at the time,
Mhm.
TLC, whatever, in the 90s. And we would see these posters like in the school of them reading a book. And so I even like growing up with like Reading Rainbow. I remember growing up watching Reading Rainbow, on PBS. I've heard they've retooled Reading Rainbow. I haven't seen the new one yet. In fact, I don't know even where, because I was thinking the other day, like I see the brother on my Facebook feed, but I don't know where you can, watch it or
And
what.
actually watch it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I need to look that up.
I want to audition for it. I,
Huh?
I want to audition for it.
I know, right? Um, but I just feel like that at least when I was growing up, I felt like there was also this sort of and being in education, this top down, yes, the Read campaigns, exactly. I felt like
Mhm.
there was sort of this top down also approach, and there was more of a priority and a push on the importance of reading and getting kids excited about reading. I even remember there was a program where they're still around, um and they would bring us free books, and it was called the RIF program, which stands for Reading is Fundamental.
Wait a minute.
and they
Ah,
would come to our school like, I don't know, maybe like every couple of months, and they would just like bring all of these books. I remember being in elementary and it had the riff stamp on the inside, so you knew it came from Reading is Fundamental. And like it may have even been every month, but I know they would come frequently and they would like give us free books. And so, I just feel like there's also been a shift, and I don't know if that kind of started when, the No Child Left Behind came in under Bush, and it seemed like to kind of move towards standardized testing and teaching towards a test. And, all of the oxygen as far as educational policy seemed to be really around, testing and skill and drill. But and I think that's part of the point, the issue too. As a teacher, there are a lot of things that we have to teach to get these kids ready to do all of this testing. And it's, kids, I feel like, are constantly over tested. um and so I think there's been a cultural shift in terms of the priority, even from the government to even educational policy, where I know growing up, I feel like I was a beneficiary of all of these programs, whether it be, Book It, whether it be the Reading is Fundamental, whether it be the Read campaigns, growing up on um, um, Reading Rainbow, where there was a core part of the culture, at least in my point of view, and even education, where it was this constant push to read. And Nubia mentioned doing the drop everything and read. Um, with her community, that was part of school. Like everybody dropped
it
everything and
read.
read. Teachers, even janitors, like it was a school effort for everybody dropped everything, whether it's 15, 20 minutes, and you read.
Mhm.
And I really attribute a lot of those programs that I grew up on to cultivating my love of reading. And I just don't see, I could be wrong. Maybe it's, happening in certain places, but I feel like we've gotten away from that culture of really
Mhm.
prioritizing reading and getting kids excited about reading and making
Sure.
reading accessible and books accessible and
Oh,
placing,
absolutely.
giving kids free books and things like that. I feel like that has also put a dent into, that loss of reading as
Oh,
well.
true. Absolutely.
Um, okay, Nubia said they had that as well. It wasn't called Book It, but they had the drop everything and read.
Off
Okay.
everything.
Yeah, and it would be dope to bring the read campaigns back.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Um, so moving along, we're kind of winding down. I know we've been on here a while. So I want to build a book collection. Can you hear me?
What'd you say? You were kind of fuzzed out.
Oh,
I didn't know
sorry.
if
I was
it was a
saying
question.
we're winding down, getting to some of the last couple questions. I was saying,
Mhm.
what advice would you give to others who want to, build a book collection?
Good question. I would say first build it around something that find a subject that you enjoy and kind of go one author at a time. Because you kind of have to start small, I believe, and start with what you enjoy. If you are into young adult, if you're into sci-fi, start there and build your collection around there. And one thing I've that really kind of broadened reading, and I think that I find really interesting is that I'll find an author and then I'll look at some of the praise that the author received, and it's usually authors of the same genre. You know, if I see Albert French, I'll see a forward by John Edgar Wideman. You know, and then you see Alice Walker chiming in saying this was an amazing, important novel. So I kind of I would say start off with an author and um, definitely enjoy the reading that author, but also learn about the author, because when you learn about the author, you get the origin, and then you end up finding all these other similar authors, maybe some that this author patterned their work after, and you could really explore the genre a lot further than just the cover of the book.
Definitely. What books are you currently reading or on your TBR? I know you have some videos where you actually,
You talk about.
take the time and write and you read. Um,
I,
um,
I did have a few. Um, I am currently reading Captain's Dinner. It's by Adam Cohen. It's a true story about an English um, about an Englander, rich dude who decided to purchase a vessel, but he was doing it more. He was doing it for stature. He wanted to, but he couldn't afford it, so he got a second-rate vessel, and he hired a crew of four to go pick it up, and they went and picked it up and they became shipwrecked and the boat capsized. They were in this little bitty boat and they literally had to eat the cabin boy.
oh,
I don't
goodness.
know how I got into this genre. Yeah, they were in bad shape. And it came, I had read this book called Tender is the Flesh. And
Mhm.
it was about cannibalism. It was fully about cannibalism. And I was like, oh, I was just intrigued by the cover. I saw it in, I think it was Walmart. And I was like, I want to see what that's about. So I was listening to NPR and they were talking about this book. And I was like, how did I end up with two books about cannibalism? And I just was really, sometimes I have to go in a different direction, because I can't just like read the same genre. I have to get out of the brothers. And February is coming up, so it's going to be all of this, all month of February. You know, a lot of Baldwin in February for me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm reading Captain's Dinner. I went to the Goodwill and I picked up Will. So, I definitely interested in reading Will. I kind of glanced through it a little bit, and Will said something so funny. He said in the beginning, I think it was chapter 8, he said, in the beginning, I always hated light-skinned dudes. He said, because all the women liked them and didn't like me. And I was like, wait a minute, Will, you are the light-skinned dude. What are
I
you
was gonna
talking?
say, is
He
he not licensed?
Thank you. He said the I'll be sure that he named somebody else. And El DeBarge. He said I'll be sure and El DeBarge. I hated dudes like that because they got all the women and they all loved them because they were light skinned and everything. And I'm like, Will, what exactly are you talking about? You're them. You're the light skinned dude. So I'm reading that and I definitely want to get this done. A Mercy by Toni Morrison and Elion Wu. I've never read it. Master Slave Husband Wife. um, this one is very promising for me. It's about
Yeah.
passing, passing and stuff. Yeah, so I definitely want to pick those books up next. I've ordered about 6 or 7 books, and I don't know. I move around. Sometimes it's about how I feel. I read Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea not too long ago. Yukio Mishima, Japanese dude who committed suicide, and I just try to mix it up a lot, but I will DNF something if I'm not feeling it. I'll have to put it, I got too many books and I don't have a whole lot of time, you know. I got a lot of books to read, more than one can read in a lifetime. So I want to get the most out of it. So if I'm not feeling it, I'm going to DMF it for something else.
Yeah, I totally feel you. And Newbie, to answer your question, I'm reading, I don't have it here with me, but this biography right now of this gentleman, his name is Ichabod Flewellen. He was the first person to set up a Black History Museum
Oh,
in
wow.
uh
Ichabod flew out.
out of Ohio, I believe. Um near Cleveland, and unfortunately it was kind of tragic. He ended up getting the museum taken away from him, and the board of directors locked him out because they had differences on how to run the museum. So his sister-in-law wrote a biography about his journey with the museum and everything, and so I'm currently reading that. But I don't know if you all saw, Brett, you held up the Toni Morrison book. I don't know if you saw the post about where it said Dochi, I guess, and I may be mispronouncing his name, but Kai Sanat, or whatever. I'm not that familiar with him, but Dochi, he's trying to get into reading. Okay, thank you. He's trying to get into reading. So Dochi recommended that he pick up Toni Morrison. So people were like, it was a bunch of people commenting that that was a bad recommendation. And if somebody is trying to like get into reading, Toni Morrison is a bit much, um and swaying him from that. So I just wondering what you all think. Nubia was saying it them folks laughed at him while he started his journey. Yeah, exactly. People were, laughing and making fun. And that's part of the problem too.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone if we can if if we're trying to get back to a culture of reading, and
Hmm.
people are being vulnerable enough to, say they're starting their journey however that is, to then turn around and lambast people and things like that is
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
And sure, Toni Morrison can be difficult. I mean, she's difficult for me, and I consider some of her work
She's.
myself to be a seasoned reader. But again,
Hmm.
these are just suggestions. Um,
Hmm.
and if he reads Toni Morrison and that's a bit too much, then like as you and Newbie have said, he can put it down and on to the next. I mean, there's
Yeah. You can't put
hundreds
it
of
down.
thousands of books out there. So I don't think, and some of these people who were making fun of it probably have not read Toni Morrison themselves.
Morrison at all anyway.
No, and so they have all these opinions on what she should be recommending or not recommending. Why don't you recommend something?
Right.
Instead of
Exactly.
talking about it, then throw out some
Recommend.
recommendations.
Who do you? Yeah, I think that I love Toni Morrison. Do I think that is a bit much for someone who has never read? Yeah, but maybe. But why not start with a classic author? You could read Frida McFadden, which love her or hate her, she's very popular. She puts out a book a week. I've read a few of her books, and I'm gonna say it. I think that it just feels so AI generated. It feels like it was just all just this mass produced. It felt like I was two novels in and I put her down for good because I was like, these are the exact same books,
Mm.
the exact same train of thought. People used to say that about Eric Jerome Dickey back in the day, but I disagree, and I think that to start with something like that is good. Start with a classic. Go outside of what you what I consider to be more like social media reads. You don't why go with this literal pop lit, why start with pop lit? This start with something classic. Dive deep if you're gonna go, because like you said, you can always put it down and you can go with Zora Neale Hurston.
Yeah, well, she's difficult too. And
Right.
Nubia was saying in the comments that also maybe offer to buddy read it with them, so Dochi could, do a partner read. And actually,
Yeah.
that's very helpful. I know even with my students, I have various levels of readers in my class, but those conversations are fruitful because what one reader may not have gotten, another did in that
Right.
conversation, that helps to bridge that misunderstanding, that one reader may or something they may have missed. So definitely
Yeah.
she could maybe, buddy read it with him.
Yeah,
Um,
we're talking about an adult, right? We're not, I
yeah,
mean, this is not like, okay, start with Dr. Seuss and work your way up. You know what I mean? If you're gonna read, read something with a soul to it.
right.
You'll get a lot
Definitely.
more out of it. Something with a spine, you know.
Definitely. And I always, when people, of course, because I'm a book lover, people are always asking me for recommendations. And I always ask the person, well, what are your interests?
Pretty,
What do you like? Because I could recommend a lot, but so
mm-hmm,
I try to start with what people like. And then there's books that I know of that fall in line with what they're interested in, then I kind of make my recommendations based off of what it is that they like, because no one's gonna, even if you can comprehend a book, no one's
mm-hmm.
gonna suffer through something that they're really not interested in.
Yeah.
It's like when you made the comment about how you try to go outside of the mold and read certain something that's different. I know one time I tried to take my hand at reading some, fantasy novels. I'm not a fantasy, type of person, but I tried to, read some high fantasy, and I couldn't get through it. I could comprehend everything that was going on, but it just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, I just couldn't, I just couldn't connect. I just couldn't get into it. So I tried my best, but you're not going to suffer through something that you just are
Right. You're gonna
not,
sleep
enjoy.
through it. You're
It's
gonna
got
put it down.
exactly. Reading needs to be an enjoyable experience,
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, and so uh Nubia was saying she doesn't think reading has to be a solitary act. I want to know what people are reading because I'm not reading all that, but that means you can tell me about it and I can tell you about what's going on, about what I'm getting into. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Agreed.
I think also having those conversations, I mean, I think, people are attracted to book clubs for that very reason, or
Mm-hmm.
reading circles, or saloons, or whatever, different things like that, so you can have those conversations about
Oh,
what
sure.
it is that you're reading for sure. So the last two, questions. One, because it is, MLK Day, I, can't let the day go by asking if you have a favorite either MLK book or quote or speech or, anything as it relates to MLK that want to talk about or reflect,
Um,
recommend, or anything like that. Newbie,
I'm,
you can as well if you
I
have
was
some.
just thinking, I can't remember this quote. I just used it. I used it not too in one of my videos not too long ago. Can't remember a favorite quote by MLK. Of course, I've read the speech. I mean, we used to actually have to read the speech. That was like required reading. When I was in school, it was just a thing we had to do during Black History Month. It was we only had two heroes back when I was in school. And it was MLK, and I think it was like and Harriet Tubman.
Mhm.
I think that was it. Booker T. Washington maybe later, but not a specific quote from MLK. I did align um with his beliefs. I think that over time, I think that they were a little bit more idealistic than I think that a lot of people could tolerate as the years went on,
Mhm.
because not it was proven to be false that not because nonviolence is not the it didn't solve the problems. It wasn't a thing because nonviolence works when you're dealing with nonviolent people in nonviolent situations, but unfortunately, um,
is just like trying to talk to a bully. Can you really talk a bully out of a fight? No, because he's doing his job. His job is a bully, just like in race. It was we were dealing with bullies. He had to deal with bullies, and it cost him his life.
Mhm.
So yeah, no specific MLK references. I was actually supposed to go to a thing at the King Center today, but I wanted to do this.
Oh, well,
I've been to a few.
okay. Well, I appreciate it. We could have rescheduled. I hope I didn't, you know,
Is
take
it
you
my
away from
earbuds?
that. Can you hear?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. I'm not on mute.
You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I don't think I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can't
Yes.
hear you.
Really?
You guys can hear me? Because I can't hear you.
Really?
Right. Well, at least you guys can hear me, but I can't hear you.
Okay. Well, we're about to wrap
I
up
turned into
anyway.
Nubia now.
Okay. We're about
Maybe
to
I should
wrap up.
start typing.
Yeah, we're about to
Oh,
wrap up.
this is
Um,
terrible. I can't hear you. I think my earphones died,
oh
so I
goodness.
can't hear.
We're about to wrap up. I'll put it in the notes. Nubia was saying she thinks it's
Maybe I
important.
should
She
just
was
try
talking to
lip
somebody
reading.
um saying that we need to read what MLK wrote and not just what people are saying
I'm
about
terrible at the Zoom thing. I'm absolutely terrible at it, I think.
oh, that's her.
Yeah,
Um,
come up with anything. Come up with this. Maybe that'll work.
can, can you hear me? Okay, well, we're about to wrap up anyway. Um, so Brett, I'll your YouTube page is Black Lit Geek.
I
Um,
shouldn't be laughing.
I'm gonna put we are
I think it's you, Yolanda.
it is Newbie, can you hear me?
Can I type? Hold
It's
on, let me see
me.
if
He
I can
talking
type.
about he think it's you. It's him.
Like, can you hear me? Well, Nubia can still hear me. So we're wrapping up. I'm gonna put
Yeah, I can't hear
or
you guys.
okay, I'm gonna say how can people follow you online or your okay, so Brett is his YouTube page is Black Lit Geek. I'll also put this in the group if you all want to follow Brett's YouTube page um and any other of his social media following, he can give me that information. I'll also put it on the chat. Brett, thank you so much. I'm going to message you. I'm going to send you a copy of this book that I self-published. So I'm going to send you a copy. He can't hear me. So I'll get your address to send you a copy as a thank you of this book. Uh, so I'm going to put this in the chat. Okay, thank you, Nubia. See if he saw that. Okay, so thank you, Brett, so much for this fruitful conversation. Nubia, thank you as always for coming and supporting and being part of this community. I hope you all have a great MLK rest of the day. Um, How, all right. Okay, you're on mute. Okay, well, we're gonna sign off. Brett, we've wrapped up. So I'll reach out to you we're gonna sign off.
Yeah,
Brett, I don't know if you
sincerely,
can hear
guys,
me.
but yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll talk to you. All right. Bye-bye.